Oh, you're quite welcome for that. Saying is it only your second live stream? They're kind of fun. They can be very educational. We're going to start out this, not necessarily the Parfix part of it. A lot of people have the thought of um, oil-based finishes versus the Parfix, and we can do both, sort of. Try and show you the differences a little bit. One of the things you can use is a boiled linseed oil. This is really not a film kind of an oil. You definitely can't use a film kind of an oil. Walnut, of course, would be one of the likely suspects, maybe cherry even. I personally get the color out of the cherry that I want, either way. But we'll just put a little bit of a boiled linseed oil on, try and do half of it. I actually could have cut a groove in there. That probably would have been better. But we'll get the idea. So that's sort of the look that most people are looking for in the oil finishes. They feel that the oil brings out more of the finish. In all reality, you're sort of darkening the piece of wood. So just put a little bit of boiled linseed oil on there. A lot of people, when I first started doing the turning, a lot of people like to use the boiled linseed oil with their CA. They feel that it helps it flow better or something or other, I think is what somebody had told me at one point. I personally didn't see where it made any difference, but in their mind it did. So according to the instructions on the boiled linseed oil is you're supposed to put it on there and let it dry for 10 or 15 minutes or something or other and wipe off the excess. I'm going to wipe off just a little bit of the excess now. And then we're going to set that off to dry because we're going to get on to finishing some real stuff and then we'll come back to that a little bit later and we'll put some of the Parfix over top of that. And we'll see what the difference is. See if there is a difference, what the difference might be. Otherwise, we're going to get on to finishing some pieces. I have several pieces to do. This is kind of like do a little bit of a demonstration and get your own work done. And we can switch. No, we already are in that one. Okay. Forgot to look at that part. Okay, so what we're going to do, we're going to make up a little pad. We're going to put a piece of polyester felt in the middle of a paper towel. These are the Brawny 4 square paper towels. A little easier to do it on a flat surface, but that's okay. What it's doing for me is giving me a little reservoir. It makes it a little pad. Just makes it a little bit less messy. Otherwise, if you just use a paper towel, it's liable to be running down your fingers or anything else. This is a Parfix 3408. This is the thinnest of the bunch. Has a 40-second time delay. It's only 5 centipoids in thickness, with water being 1. So it's very, very thin. We're going to start on the end grain. Yeah, that's the end grain. This is a piece of spalted beech. I'm going to put lots on my little pad. It also has no odor, so I'm not getting fumigated here to use this amount of CA glue at one time on something. This one will be a little tricky. There's a tiny little groove in there that I put in. You got it. That is the stuff of the day, honey. That's my wife. So we're putting lots on. What we're looking for is saturation. Want to fill up the pores of the wood, and then we will wipe off the excess. Looks like we could have did a little better job sanding on the end grain right there, but it is what it is. So now I'm just going to dribble some right in that little groove and try and get it to go around. The little groove's a nice detail feature, but it also makes it for a little bit troublesome getting the glue down in there. We're going to rub it in good. We have 40 seconds to get this done. Piece this size, you don't really have to hurry at all. What I'm looking for is to try and get it pretty well saturated that it starts to sit on the surface, which it'll do that pretty quickly on the side grain, like right there. It's already sitting on the surface, so that's so totally saturated. End grain can be a little bit more different, a little bit more difficult to get totally saturated. And if you use like a softer wood or a porous wood, then there's a little bit other ways of going about it, which I do have a piece that's much softer. I have a piece of white birch that if we get to it, I'll show you the difference. We can actually go up a little bit to the next level of thickness. Everything's saturated. I'm going to wipe off the excess because I don't want any of what is sitting on the surface to remain, because it will not lay out flat and smooth. It'll sit there and bubble. It'll sit there and beat up like a well-waxed car. So we got to get the excess off the surface. Just a dry paper towel. That's all it is. Rubbing it around, keeping a dry part of the paper towel. The brighter lights are not necessarily the greatest thing for the streaming part of it, but it helps when you can see what you're doing. Yeah, don't be shy. Don't be shy. Ask lots of questions. I was always taught there's only one dumb question in the world. That's the one you don't ask. It looks like we got everything. It looks like I got all the excess off. So, some woods are a little bit harder to tell whether you got everything off. That's why I just keep sort of spinning it around. I'm moving my head around to try and to see whether I didn't get somewhere wiped off. It'll usually be in an inconspicuous place, like right down in there. That looks pretty good. I am going to give it one little shot of accelerator, but I'm going to do the accelerating down here at the foot. That's really the only place I'm concerned at this point. You need one little shot on each side at about 18 to 24 inches away. I just want the mist to land on there. I have gloves on both hands, so it's not going to stick fast to my hand at this point. So now I can move my tailstock back. Here's where I gotta pay attention I don't knock everything over, because I want to grab it in a chuck. This is what I was holding it on. This is basically it's a jam chuck. I have a piece of wax paper on this jam chuck, because if you do something that's thin or porous, it can come right through, especially on the end grain parts, and would adhere to your jam chuck. And yes, that is experience talking there. I did it already. And the bad part is, you can see I have a blue foam on there. Well, you can guess what happened with the blue foam. It literally stuck it fast on there. And when it stuck it fast, it started to dry, of course. and it sucked it right into the grain. So I had and it was a piece of walnut, no less. So I had a walnut bowl with little chunks of blue stuff in it, which was not exactly what I had in mind. So we're going to go back and we're going to make another little pad, another little piece of polyester felt. Into our little pad again. Get our bottle of glue again. We're going to get lots on our pad. We're going to start in the middle. We'll work our way to the outside. This side will take less material to cover than the first side by virtue of you've already closed up some of the pores of the wood on the other side. So this side won't soak in as much and use as much material. So whichever side you do first will take more than the other side, I guess you would say. So once again, we're looking for the saturation. And of course, we got to get into that little corner, but we'll do the easy parts first. One thing with using this as a finish, you get to use the whole bottle. Now, when was the last time that you had a bottle of, we'll try and put it right on the edge, or a can of an oil-based finish, or a water-based finish for that matter. Water-based finishes are actually better as far as lasting, but an oil-based finish, when was the last time you actually used the entire container? So that's our inside covered. I try and keep the top of my bottle nice and clean. I wipe it off because we're not in a hurry. I'm going to grab us a clean paper towel, a dry paper towel, and we're going to start rubbing around. When I start, I don't necessarily, I'm not looking for a dry section of the paper towel at this point, because now I'm making sure that I've went over everything, and I'm not going to go back up over this top edge. I will wipe that top edge to make sure that I don't have any that I slopped over the top. But this is a one coat application and one coat only. The 3408 will not allow you to put a second coat over top of itself. It will not, if it has no place to soak in, is the easiest way to explain it, it sits on the surface. And when it sits on the surface, it beads up like a little well-waxed car and doesn't smooth itself out. The next level up in the CA glue, which is 3460, which we're not going to do it. I might do a little bit of something with that a little bit later. That one you can put on multiple coats if that's what you choose to do. Like a pen or something like that. A lot of people like to do pens that have umpteen coats. My idea of doing a pen is one coat. I don't have anything ready to show you that. I don't necessarily do very many pens, but I did experiment with it a couple weeks ago, and I was able to put one coat of 3460 on a pen. If it was easier to get to, I probably would go get it for you, but everything's packed away for the upcoming craft show in another week. Now we can do the accelerating. We could do it without the lathe spinning, or we can do it with the lathe spinning super slow. I'm going to do one swipe across, two swipes across, back and forth. We know we accelerated some of the back. We'll hit it with one more time with the accelerator. The accelerator is not necessarily a necessity in my climate. I am in Pennsylvania, so we have humidity here. CA glue wants humidity, moisture to cure. So that's what we look like so far. It's not very shiny, and it won't be. If that's the shine that you liked, you could leave it at that. The problem with leaving it just at that is once this dries and cures, there's inevitably going to be some places that the grain is going to stand up a little bit, which you would have to use some sort of the white Scotch-Brite pad or something like that on it. So we'll just set that one off to the side. And I have two of that kind of style bowl. So we'll put our jam chuck back on. Correct. All these products are available on our website at capscreations.com. They're all no odor or low. It's all made by Parson Industries out of Indiana. The glue, they are not brave enough to call it totally no odor. They call it low to no odor. I personally can't smell the CA glue at all. And if you were using the normal CA glues, right now your eyes would be watering and you couldn't see because there'd be that much of the fumes in the air. So just like our small one, and this is a much darker piece, as you can see. This is also some of the same beech. All came from the same tree. And this one's actually hard to tell which is actually end grain. That obviously is end grain right there, because you'll know when you hit the end grain because it just soaks it right in. We'll do our top lip. It's also pulling some of the dirt off that I didn't get all. It could possibly, this might be a tiny bit more expensive to use than some of the film finishes out there. But the difference is I'll be done in one coat versus 3 or 4 coats of an oil-based finish or something like that. I've done furniture work for the past too many years. I'd be showing my age to say how many. That stuff there all gets sprayed with a water-based lacquer. Now on a piece like this, I could spray this piece with the water-based lacquer really easily, no problem, and get a really nice gloss shine to it. But the problem lies with spraying. This was sanded through 400 and then 800 grit in a random orbit fashion. This was power sanded through 400, put it that way. I power sand as much as I possibly can. It leaves less radial scratches. That's a little bit more force on it. These pieces were all turned wet and left to dry. They were actually turned wet and sanded even while they were still relatively wet. They weren't wet to where they were throwing water off of them, but they had plenty of moisture in them. The tree was dead when it was taken down, but that doesn't mean the wood inside is even remotely dry. But it was fairly dry. Dry enough to actually sand, which was a nice feature to it. This one's starting to set up. This one probably still has a little bit more moisture in than what maybe I want. Or we're talking a little bit more than what we want. But we're not going to get excited about that. The paper towel is starting to drag in certain places. Just trying to get as much off of it as I can. Because if we have a little boo-boo, like right in here, it's set up with my paper towel. So we'll go back after that with some 800 grit sandpaper once it sets up. Ideally wait till it cures, which will be 24 hours. This product does have a 24-hour cure time. That doesn't mean it takes 24 hours to dry. It just means it takes 24 hours to get as hard as it possibly can, or is going to get. So that's our outside done, or the bottom done, put it that way, not the outside. So once again, a fairly nice shine. And we missed some places wiping off, that's for sure. But I think it's already has set up on me. Did. Yes. We talked a little bit too long. Our 40 seconds started to run out on us. There's little bumps and ridges right there on that. You'll run into certain pieces of wood that every once in a while will do that to you, which is kind of a pain. But it's not the end of the world. It just means that I'm going to have a little bit more work to do on that. More work than what I wanted to do, put it that way. And this one actually has used a different jaws to hold it, but these jaws will open far enough. So we'll go after the inside. Same thing as the outside. We're gonna make up our little pad. Like I say, it's nothing more than a piece of polyester felt. And we'll make it up. And it'll give us a little reservoir to hold the glue. And we'll go after the inside. And we'll try and be a little quicker on the inside than what we were on the outside. Some of the stuff like this with this kind of a shape versus like a traditional bowl or something like that can be a little bit more difficult because you're trying to get all these little places covered in basically in the allotted amount of time. Also might not have helped that this is sitting right here behind my lathe. And when I sprayed the activator, I could have gotten some of the activator could have floated over there. That's why I stay away from using very much activator until I'm done with both sides. But it is very quick to use. Pretty simple to use. It's kind of strange. This piece of wood, like I say, they both come out of the same tree. This side's setting up on me very quickly as well. You'll know it's setting up in a hurry whenever you go to hit it with the paper towel and your paper towel drags across it. You just do the best you can and get as much of it off the surface as you possibly can. And let it set up and deal with it in a different way if it does that to you. This side didn't do too bad. Just one little place there. But some of that could be some grain that is going to raise up on me a little bit. Once again, not the end of the world. That's side two. That's one, or the second one done. This time we will hit it with some activator. Sweep across, top, bottom. Come back to the back side. I'll hit it one time from the back side. Like I say, I'm spraying at a distance. The other side. the back side of this piece. The back side of this one's set up really quick. You won't be able to see it in the camera. There's some places right here that's rough, and here, which is little bumps of CA glue. There's something right there. Some of the spalding doesn't cooperate very well with the super glue for some reason. Like I say, it's not the end of the world. We're just going to sit that off and let it set up for a little while. And we'll come back, and I will actually sand that with 800 grit sandpaper when we go to buff it. If I buff it today, all these should actually sit for the 24 hours. So we might just do a simple put the glue on today, and we'll come back tomorrow evening. I do have a piece over here that I can buff. They show you the buffing process part of it. This is a vase. This one will actually be really easy to do because you can spin this one. Even though it's not going to spin true, that doesn't really matter. Because there again, this was done wet, so it's quite egg-shaped. Once again, same material. I got a rather nice couple little logs of that. My wood guy brought me a couple logs. Correct. Something there that it didn't like, and that's most likely is moisture. Because CA glue cures or sets up and cures in the presence of moisture. So we need to go back to, I'm getting there. I saw that. Thank you though, honey. That's why you're watching. Okay. Now we're back to the camera. The overhead camera. Gotcha. Once again, Spalded Beach. I could just take a paper towel and rub over it first. Like I say, got all these ready this afternoon, so I think I wiped them off, but I'm not sure. Paper towel is a very good thing to wipe over your pieces with before you finish them, because it's very, it turned it a little tan. Kind of an inexpensive way of doing things. This one we have two choices. We could wipe it on just like we've been doing the bowls, or if your lathe goes slow, as in this is 136 RPMs right now, we can put it on while spinning. I wouldn't go anywhere over 200 RPMs. So now I can put it on while it's spinning. I can even hold the bottle upside down and dribble some on it while it's spinning and holding the pad against it. I realize my hand's probably in the road of what you want to see. When I get down here to the chuck, I just want to make sure that I don't run it over that edge where we could stick it fast to the chuck. The other thing I probably should have done before I did that was I could have put some wax, just some like microcrystalline wax or something along those lines on the jaws of the face of the chuck jaws, just to make sure that it doesn't stick fast. So that just makes it really nice and quick to put the glue on. And now I can go back and rub it around. Okay, on the next one. I'll try and do it. I'll do it, yeah. And the next one I'll do it before we put the piece in. It's a little hard to do it when it's sitting on top of it. So I'm looking for dry spots right now. And there's a few of them. So we're rubbing it around good, getting it into our dry spots, around our edge. As you can see, it's starting to set up, and we went through the glove. You do go through a fair amount of gloves, because if you play around long enough with it, it'll eventually stick fast to the gloves. So we're going to go back and we're going to go over it with our wet or dry paper towel. The spindle work to do it. Spindle work is a good place to start with it, just because you can put it on just like I did right there, and not drop the paper towel on the floor. But as you can see, maybe I really don't pull. I'm not really pulling that terribly much of it back off. I'm just getting what's that excess that's on the surface off of it. But I'm going to go over it several times. We do have a website that we sell this on. If you're interested or want to know more about it. Not a whole lot more information. Well, there's a little bit more information as far as the thicknesses go and things like that. It's not a fancy website by any means, but it's a way to get it out there to people. And that one cooperated just fine. Would have been easier if this one didn't cooperate on the other one. This would have been easier to actually sand than the other one. The only other thing I can do inside of the neck. I got to get a new glove. You always tear a hole right in the tip of the finger. But at least nowadays the gloves are available that you can find them. Back when all that pandemic bullshit was going on, you couldn't find any. Okay, let's go back to our pad. These are Brawny 4 squares, paper towel. I like them because they're square, so I don't have to mess around with tearing or cutting them. Because if you tear paper towels, you're always going to leave fuzzy edges that could stick fast to things. Piece of polyester felt. Yes, this is spalted beech as well. This one has some really nice black lines in it. So we're going to fold up our little piece of polyester felt about where the ends are at, somewhere thereabouts. And I'll make it into a pad, squish it up like that, and we're ready to go. It's really pretty simple. You're not going to be able to see me do anything on the inside of this. So I just go ahead and do it, and I'll take it off and move on to something else. I am going to Cheeto and spin it. That way I can reach in as far as I possibly can on the inside of this neck. I'm not worried about getting it way down inside of this vase. It's just a vase for, dried flowers or fake flowers or something like that. Certainly isn't going to be something to hold water. And then just like before, we'll wipe off the excess. And as you can see, I didn't do a very good job cleaning the dirt out on the inside, but it'll be all right. While it's spinning, and the bottle of glue is well off to the side, and the lid is on, going to spray the activator. I'm going to come across 1 time, 2 times. That's it. We're not going to spray our activator up here. You see so many people out there, especially in the pen world, they seem to be the worst. They think they need to spray their activator up here and then wonder why they get things that bubble up and things like that. The activator is just to get it started. It'll take over and do the rest. A little bit goes a long ways. And there's our beach vase. Like I say, it does have some parts of it has some nice character to it. There's some plain stuff here on that side, but of course you're gonna sit it on the table, or this will go next week to the craft show. It'll be sitting looking that direction. Once again, we're gonna sit it off to the side and let it cure. I have one more bowl that we're gonna do. And we're only going to do part of this bowl. And you'll see why here in a minute. I made that jam chuck out of resin. There's some resin I dabble a little bit in casting. And some friends of ours, mainly my wife's, do a lot of casting. That's sort of their business in a way. They cast like replica gun parts for like movie parts and stuff like that. And they use a smooth on resin. Is who it's made by. So I'm going to use my paper towel to wipe off the dirt. Doesn't appear there was any dirt on it. For some reason or other, I'm not sure why. This one, I normally don't take the tenant off. Everything that I've done so far has the tenant still attached. It just makes life easier to be able to flip this around, because this one here, I'm going to end up doing just the backside, and then I'm going to have to wait for a while, and then try and figure out how I'm going to do the inside. The inside I'll probably end up just holding in my hand and do the inside, and then come back, and it's not even signed, so we'll have to come back and do that. I think I did this. I do some live streaming on Twitch, and I think somebody asked me one night, how do you take the tenant off? How I take the tenant off, because most of this stuff is basically, this is how I do it. This is what works for me. So we're back to our little pad. This is a piece of ash. It still has some spalding lines in. It's not the prettiest piece in the world, but it's okay. End grain. This is where this is one of them pieces of wood that we definitely probably need that piece of wax paper on the inside. This is about 1/4 of an inch. It might be a fat 1/4 of an inch thick. So this is the kind of piece that could actually follow the grain, follow the pores through someplace, and end up on the inside. If you like to do really, really thin work, as in less than 1/8 of an inch or less, something like that, especially if it being a wood that would be sort of porous, it can be an adventure to do this process with it. But if you choose to do it, and I have done a couple of them, I don't normally do things that are 1/8 of an inch thick, but I do some, because they become a little bit too fragile for me. Always do the inside first. There is one place I will do the inside first, because the outside is a whole lot easier to sand than the inside. And I haven't done any lately, but I think what I would do is use the 3408 on the inside and then come back on the outside with a 3460 because it's less likely to bead up, or it won't bead up as quickly, because at about 1/8 of an inch thick, it will go straight through in a lot of places. And it's not just a few places. Everywhere there's end grain, it's coming through to the other side. The one that I did that way myself, just sort of as a trial, I guess you'd say. I figured if I was quick enough, I could do both sides at one time. And I did, but I was unsuccessful because I did how did I do it that day? I did the outside first, wiped it off just like I did here, spun it around, did the inside. Well, the outside is still, even though what's on the surface is dry or starting to dry, what's underneath the surface is still wet. If you've ever done some like inlay work and things like that, you'll know very good and well that you got to let that sit for, your best bet's to let it sit overnight. Because just because there's what's dry on top means that what's underneath is not going to be dry because there's no moisture getting to it. And we know that we need moisture for it to cure. No need to. Now, there's no need to seal this. This is one coat application. Actually, if you sealed it, it won't work. If we were to put a coat of shellac on here and try and go back over with this, it won't work. Not at all. Matter of fact, CA glue, if you do any like inlay work or something like that, I can show you a problem child kind of a piece that I'm working on. Let me take this one off. We'll set this off to the side. So as you can see, there's one side, the other side is not done. It did not, I don't see any place where it went through. This is probably not thin enough for it to go through the whole way. So I can give this like 10 or 15 minutes. And then I'll come back and do the inside without holding it. Do not get cute. Do not get the bright idea of using a vacuum chuck. That's a very bad idea. That's not my experience talking. That's Emilio Archival. He tries things, all kind of things to make his life easier, faster, whatever. And he put a piece on, because he does a lot of calabash bowls, which is probably the absolute hardest ones to finish that you can think of. I've done a handful of them, and they are definitely not a one-step finishing project. But here's a piece that I did that has the manufactured, or man-made, I guess you'd say. Yeah. Man-made turquoise. This is a piece of walnut. And of course, you have to have some pieces places that there was little voids showed up. So that makes it a pain. But this is also a piece that I'm using super glue here. I'm using the 3460 because it's slower setting yet in all these places to adhere all that stuff. But now I'm left with all this rough places because all I did was sand that back off. Power sanded it, but this stuff goes in so far that you're really hard to actually sand the whole way back to bare wood. You can, but it's a very great amount of, put it this way, it's a very big amount of sanding to do. It's all kind of places that I'm going to have to go back and sand that with a little bit 800, maybe even some of it might even be 600, something like that. Where was I going? So So I think I have all my pieces now. Oh, no, I don't. I have my piece of walnut from earlier. So the discussion keeps coming up. I like my oil finishes because it darkens the wood. So there we have it. There's a piece of walnut, black walnut. That is boiled linseed oil. I put that on at the beginning of our stream, and we've been on for, how long have we been on? What time is it? 45 minutes. So I put a coat of boiled linseed oil on there. It's been 45 minutes since we've done anything with it. I wiped off the excess right away. I didn't really try and saturate it or anything like that. This time I won't even bother with the piece of felt for this. I just took my paper towel and I folded it up. And once again, we're going to spin this piece and put our glue on. Get our paper towel wet to start with. And then we'll just run across. And just keep smoothing it, not smoothing it out, I am spreading it out basically. Side to side. You can see we're still pulling dirt off. Walnut's probably one of the worst ones for the dirt. Also a pain in the ass because of it. You got to try and get as much of the sanding dust out of the pores as what you possibly can. Otherwise it will remain in the pores when you're doing this. And it can show up as little light spots in there. It's also going to help pull some of that stuff off. Just like everything else, we're going to wipe it dry. And now we have to remember which end had the boiled linseed oil on. I can see the pencil line in the middle. You probably can't see that, but I can see the pencil line that's in the middle. So can you see a difference with putting the linseed oil on and then the CA over top of it, or the plain CA? Personally, I can't see the difference. From where I'm standing, I really can't see a difference in them. Certainly make you feel better a little bit, I guess. But it's an option. A non-drying oil, or not a non-drying oil, a non-film finish oil. The boiled linseed oil is a good one. You might be able to get away with some of the. What else would you be able to use? You might be able to use some of the walnut oils and stuff like that. You'd have to experiment with it. Like I say, I normally don't do anything with it. I could. It would give you, it gives you a little bit darker, richer color to it from the start. But, you put it up beside a piece of walnut. This is a lighter piece of walnut to start with. It's not a whole lot of difference, I don't think. I don't see it myself, but it is an option. It just needs to be something that's not going to clog up the pores, because the super glue has to be able to go in the pores, because it's not going to sit on the surface. This is not a surface finish. It's basically a finish that's going to go below the surface, and when you pick up a piece of wood, you're still picking up a piece of wood. You're not picking up a piece of finish or plastic, however you want to consider it. So we're going to go on to buffing. I'm actually going to switch pieces to buff, because none of those pieces that I just put the super glue on, I do not buff them right away. You will make out much better if you don't, is what I found. Be patient. If you were doing an oil finish, you would have put that first coat of finish on. Wrong wheel. And you'd be waiting for the next whatever, 8 hours or something like that for it to dry. So think of it this way: is this is your first coat, and then tomorrow you're going to come back and put another coat on. And in this case, tomorrow you're going to come back and take the tenant off, finish the bottom up, put a little bit more of the super glue on the bottom to finish the very bottom after you've signed it and all that good stuff, or whatever you do on the bottom. And then you can buff the whole thing all at one time. It'll be a one-step process. And I need a little piece of sandpaper. Want to get off some of the... Here's where I got to use my face shield. These buffing wheels leave lots of little fuzzies flying around. Inevitably, you'll swallow and choke on. So here's a piece that we're going to buff. This is a piece of maple. I am not sure whether I just put it down as maple because I couldn't remember whether I had gotten some red maple and I also got some sugar maple. And I'm thinking by the bark of this one that it's some of the sugar maple. The bark did stay on it. It's a crotch piece. It has some flames in it. You rub your hand over it, it has some roughness to it, so there's probably a few places we're going to have to sand a little bit, but we'll see. Inside of this was done last week, I think it was. As far as the finishing part, the back side of this, or the bottom of it, was done this afternoon. So we're kind of pushing the envelope a little bit, but it'll work okay. The real reason that you don't want to go after it right away is because you got to remember there's quite a bit of material below the surface. As soon as you generate heat and friction, it wants to suck that stuff back up to the surface. And when it does so, then it's going to leave you little bumps. So it's really best to be patient and give it the day's rest before you go hitting it with the buffer. Buffing speed, this is an 8-inch buffing wheel. Going to be about 1700 RPMs. The product is Vonnex. It comes out of the UK. The Vonnex is designed to polish lacquers and plastics. That's generally its life's profession, is just designed to buff those two things. It does quite a good job, seeing as how CA glue is a plastic. It actually does a really, really good job if you do any casting and like to buff your, whether it be a pen blank or handle blank of some sort. I'm going to try and buff in a couple different directions. As you remember, when you're buffing, you're still basically putting in scratches, even though they're kind of very, very small scratches. It's still scratches nonetheless. So I don't want them to end up being a pattern of scratches. I'm also going to feel with my fingers as I go. Right here's a rough spot. I think there's a couple rough spots on there. You can see it's sort of orange in color. The compound is sort of an orangish, baby shit orange, maybe you call it. And you can see the wheels is turned white. A little bit goes a long ways. So I just keep putting a little bit more on. Like I say, this one's sort of a problem child because we're going to have to sand here very directly. You don't want to put 10, you're better off not putting 10 tons of compound on. You can start leaving streaks of the compound. It's always one of them things of stick on the shot. Ouch. Getting to be that time of year. You use a buffing wheel and touch something metal and you get shocked. That's the time of year it is now. It's getting closer to the winter time for us. So when I run my fingers over it, I have rough spots here. And there's one right over here. Actually, they're opposing one another. That one there is sort of a little, not really a branch, but for whatever reason, some of the times you won't even have any idea why. A lot of times on the natural edge stuff, you almost might as well sand up here at this edge right off the bat a little bit. But what we're going to do is we're going to use 800 grit sandpaper. If it's really bad, I'll go back to 600 grit. This is actually a wet dry sandpaper. It's called Rhino Wet. I source it locally. There's a sandpaper distributor that's about a half an hour away from us. It's probably the best sheet sandpaper I've ever found, and it's reasonably priced. So I'm going to use that. We're going to do this is what I would consider random orbit, but you can see what happens is it's plastic, so it gums it up. Now I could, if like on this one, everything is finished on this one, I could actually use some water, and that might help that not stick to the paper like it is. This paper here is like super good for the resin stuff. The top part of the natural edge is almost always a place that is going to need a little bit of attention. And it's usually, I think, because of the bark has a little bit of moisture, may have some moisture that's still left in there, where you just don't necessarily get that sanded as well. You can go through quite a few pieces of sandpaper when you're doing this, though. A little piece, but nonetheless, let me get another piece of sandpaper. We'll get them all at one time. But as you can see, it just, it's plastic, so it just clogs it up. Where if I was to use some water on that, it usually doesn't clog it up. To do like the resin or the hybrid blanks or something like that, and use water, then it doesn't clog it up. But water would be a little bit messy to use in this fashion here. So the fingers tell all. Just run your fingers over it till you find a place that maybe didn't necessarily do what you wanted it to do. Random orbit. Do it in circles. It's basically the same as your random orbit sander that you would use if you're doing furniture work. That walnut one will require a little heavier sandpaper because there's a lot of places on that one that has really stood up. But we're not really putting giant size scratches back in. We're just sanding off the super glue that has been left sitting on the surface where we don't want it. Here again, if we would wait till the next day, it does more like that. because that down there for whatever reason is totally pretty much cured. So we'll just get a white powder off of it rather than clogging the sandpaper right up. Like I say, our fingers tell all, and somebody's going to pick this up. Whether you give it away or you sell it, the first thing they do is pick it up and feel it. So you don't want any rough spots. Definitely don't want anything that has sharp edges. At least I don't, put it that way. That's my philosophy. Find a place where the sandpaper is still good. This is not a time for power sanding either. This is strictly hand sanding. Unless you really made a mess out of it, but I think that should be good. We'll get our trusty face shield back on so I don't suck all the little pieces of cotton fiber. And we're going to go back and we're going to buff it again. Now it's going to give us the shine that we want and the smoothness. That's the wonders of the product, is this stuff comes out as long as you've sanded properly. And this is by no means any excuse for scratch marks, tool marks. Matter of fact, this will highlight every little defect that you have because it is a shinier finish. It is not a high gloss finish. It's more of a high satin finish. It can be a higher gloss finish if you want. There's always wax that you can put on, which is one of the last steps that I do to them. I will put a coat of carnauba wax on them. If you want it to be shinier yet, you can put multiple coats of carnauba wax on it. And the places that I sanded that little bit with, they've disappeared. You won't know the difference of places you sanded and where you didn't sand unless you go crazy with sanding, but you won't need to go back and reapply, or you'll be sanding it back off anyhow. But hardest part of would be if you have like the little, I've sort of decided I like the little bead for a foot, which is nice, looks nice, but it also becomes an issue of trying to get down in there and buffing it. But right on the corner, the buffing wheel works. Give it a feel, make sure that we don't have any place that's like right there that there's still stuff standing up. So one last place to hit. You can do you can do 10 pieces in a row and not have to go back and sand anything. And then you're going to get some of these pieces that, for whatever reason, the wood and the glue doesn't always cooperate. It's never really a lot. I've only ever had one piece that was kind of a total loss. And that was a piece of Japanese cedar, I think it was called, Cryptomeria. It just, for whatever reason, it doesn't like it. As soon as you put it on, it's set up. Gave you no working time at all. I've sanded it back off with starting with like 80 grit sandpaper to sand it back off and get below that. Left to dry for another 6 months.
Come back and did it the second time, and it still did it the second time. I haven't gone for the third time yet. I probably will just do something else with it, finish-wise. So like, zapped. So there's our shine that we're going to get just from the Vonnex. The harder the wood, the higher the shine will become. The softer the wood, like I have some white birch that I've done. That does not get a super high shine to it. Hence, that's why I used a little bit thicker CA glue on that one. It's still going to be done in one coat. See? Inside of the bowl, we actually can do the inside with the same big buffing wheel. Carefully. Making sure that I don't catch the front edge that's closest to me, or it could be exciting. Because there's a concrete wall about 2 feet in front of me, 2.5 feet in front of me. So if it grabs it and throws it, it's going against the concrete wall. And it'll become a piece of designer firewood. Like I say, this was done a week ago or more. I did learn a valuable lesson. Like I say, this is designed to do lacquers and plastics. Well, I have the capability of spraying lacquer, even though it's a water-based lacquer. It's still a lacquer. And I did a bowl about that size.
Wasn't natural edge, but I was being lazy, and I don't particularly like the little round balls. I don't think they do as good of a job as what they could. So I had it just in the same fashion that what I just did. The problem was this center point where I was rotating at never moves. The whole 5 minutes or whatever it was that I buffed, that little quarter-size section in the center, it never moved. That buffing wheel it literally ground through. That had 3 or 4 coats of lacquer on it probably, and a coat of shellac underneath all that. So 4 to 5 coats of finish on, it went right straight. That little quarter size went right straight through to bare wood. Needless to say, I was not a happy camper, but life is all about learning lessons, getting lessons. The school of, as my daddy always said, the school of hard knocks. So there's our Vonnex. Like I say, this is a piece from the outside was earlier today. The other part of it was from last week. I am not in a hurry to buff them. There's no need to be. It's already going to save you a ton of time. So now we're going to go to the carnauba wax. These are the Beal buffing wheels. Carnauba wax wants to be put on around 900 RPMs. If you go too fast with a carnauba wax, you'll be a very unhappy camper because you'll start to melt the wax. And when you melt the wax, it doesn't really flow. It just becomes streaks of wax on the piece. And as you very well know, carnauba wax is extremely hard. Hence, when you put streaks of carnauba wax on your nicely finished piece of turning, it becomes very difficult to get them off. You almost have to use a little scraper to scrape them off. And then you're going to start all over with the finishing and buffing and all that good stuff. It was not be a pleasant kind of episode.
just like with the the outside, or the Vonex part, I'm going to buff in multiple directions. Always feeling for something that doesn't feel right. That one actually feels pretty good. Excuse me.
So there'd be a finished piece, or at least the bottom is finished. We're going to do the inside. Just need a little drink of water. Like I say, if you want it shinier, if you want the higher gloss finish, you could keep on put multiple coats of carnauba wax on top of it. Carnauba wax will build up, and you can keep on going. If it was a piece that was a non-natural, a flat rim bowl, you could put any of the microcrystalline waxes on top of it as well. Once it's cured, I wouldn't do any of it till give it to 24 hours or close to it. If you don't have the buffing system and you don't do natural edge bowls, or pieces natural edge, I should say, doesn't necessarily need to be a bowl. You can use the abrasive paste. Tons of different ones out there. It'll give you a pretty nice shine as well. There, I would recommend putting a little wax over top of it, just to give it a little bit more durable shine. The finish itself is very durable. I'm a truck driver by trade. I have a baseball bat that I made to check trailer tires. So it's not getting used as hard as what it was in the past couple months, but I will smack in the neighborhood of probably 30 or 40 tires a day with that maple baseball bat. That maple baseball, I did it just for the sake of trying it. I did the same process that maple. It's a hard maple baseball bat. I skipped the buffing part of it. I didn't buff it, but it had the one coat of the 3408 on. I might have buffed. I don't think I buffed it. Took it to work, and it's probably a year and a half, maybe 2 years old. The finish has not cracked or chipped or any of that stuff. The only thing it has done is gotten dirty, because, I mean, it's hitting dirty-ass tires every day. But there's our finished piece, ready to put on the shelf. These buffing wheels and their little fibers that come off of them. Like I say, ready to go, ready to do whatever it is you do with them. In my case, this will be on the table next weekend at the craft show for sale. The rest of them are going to sit till tomorrow. We could tell you what we'll do. We'll come back tomorrow evening, about 7 o'clock tomorrow evening, and we will take the tenants off and buff them. That way you're seeing the same thing. You can't, I don't always trust people. I mean, I'm a trustworthy kind of person as far as I'm concerned, but anybody demonstrating anything can, as my daddy always said, could blow smoke up your ass. So we'll come back tomorrow evening, 7 o'clock. We will buff them so that you know that it's the same pieces from tonight that we put the glue on. We'll come back and we'll finish them tomorrow evening, as well as this piece. We'll let this piece sit, definitely, this piece of walnut sit overnight to see if there's a difference in color till tomorrow between the one with a little bit of linseed oil on versus nothing. I don't really see a difference in it, but we'll see. We'll let it sit overnight. Come back tomorrow evening. Other than that, does anybody have any questions? If you could hit that little button down there that says subscribe, and you could also ring the bell if you want to be notified. Because we will be doing definitely be doing some more live demonstrations. We have more stuff to do. And it definitely won't be all about just finishing. Most of the ones that I normally do would be doing some sort of turning. I do have some more lidded boxes to do. I have some blanks ready to go that I want to get back to. There's a piece of spalted maple. This has been dye stabilized. So that will makes for a little bit different finishing, but it's all good. So until then, you all have a good rest of your evening, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.